Nice to have you with us, and there is lots to talk about this morning. And we start with Ontario's power plant scandal. The $1.1 billion scandal is back in the headlines today because of new allegations. This has to do with the spouse of a former advisor in Premier Dalton McGuinty's office. This individual, according to police documents, now again, this is not something that has been proven in court at this time, but according to police documents, this individual was paid $10,000 to wipe computers clean, computers belonging to a lot of senior officials within that Ontario government. Rebecca Thompson is here to break this down. As I said, this has not been proven in court. These are allegations, however, pretty serious ones.
Yeah, you know, this almost seems like it's the smoking gun. If there hasn't been already a smoking gun in the past, that indicates that the Liberals have engaged, and as you mentioned, this hasn't been proven in court, but the fact that it's an OPP investigation speaks volumes, that they engaged in what seems to be criminal behavior when it comes to wiping clear all of these computers. So if we reverse time and see what actually happened, in August 2012, the former chief of staff to Dalton McGuinty, who was the former premier, decided, look, we're going to, in the premier's office, wipe clear all of these computers because what they contain, and this is just a fabrication of how I see the events. This all has to be proven. These computers contain information regarding the gas plant scandal, regarding the huge loss of money, regarding the failure to actually follow through with this process properly and transparently with the public. The opposition at the time asked for information. So clearly what happened was that the Deputy Chief of Staff, Laura Miller, and Peter Feist, her boyfriend, now husband, her sweetheart, came in and allegedly he was paid $10,000 to properly wipe these clear.
Now, it's important just to point out at this point that Peter Feist was not somebody who worked for the government. So the idea that we have somebody, according to the police, coming in from outside of government, being paid by, I would guess, Liberal Party money into his bank account to do this wiping of these computers seems odd, to say the very least, because, you know, I've been around Queen's Park for quite some time. I know that there are people who could do that are paid to do that are on the government payroll to do that, if in fact that was needed to be done. Yeah,
it seems desperate. And this whole agenda seems like it was an act of desperation. Now, what happened was prior to Kathleen Wynne taking over from Dalton McGuinty, and Dalton McGuinty abruptly announced his resignation in October 2012, right before the committee to investigate this matter was set to take place. He decided that he was going to resign. The House rose and didn't sit until after Premier Wynne won. So in February, January, before she took office, or took the leader's office, these computers were wiped. This is what the police are investigating, and this is what the documents show that from the OPP investigation.
Yeah, what they're working on is a theory that there was a cover-up that happened here, and they're going to investigate and find out whether or not that actually happened. But this is not a good look for a premier that currently sits in power in the province of Ontario, Kathleen Wynne, who shut down this committee right before these two individuals, the woman and her now husband, were actually interviewed, were brought forward to committee. You had opposition parties jumping up and down saying, listen, these are two people that are significant to this investigation. The premier came out about a month ago and said, no, there's nothing to see here, folks. Don't worry about it. We've got all the information that we needed. If the OPP is to be believed, then that actually isn't true. We don't have all of the information.
No, you're absolutely right, is that Kathleen Wynne, before calling the election, decided, well, maybe we don't want to have this committee up here because it's very damning on this government. So, these two individuals, Laura and Peter, were set to, appear before the committee. And because of the fact that there was an election, the committee didn't happen. And then after the election, Kathleen Wynne decided that with a majority government, she had the ability to shut down this committee. Therefore, this information that the public is desperately seeking will maybe never get out unless the police manage to squeeze it out. Now, the big question is whether, because Laura Miller and Peter Feist have moved to British Columbia, And the big question is whether the police can properly investigate it, given the fact that they have moved out of province.
One of the other production orders that was unsealed by the court yesterday, a detective constable by the name of Andre Duval, he alleges that there is reasonable ground to believe that David Livingston, who is McGuinty's former chief of staff, committed the criminal breach of trust by obtaining administrative access for Mr. Feist to government-owned computers. And there's the statement right in front of you from our colleague Antonella Artuso in her column today, talking a little bit about this. What does this mean? Where is David Livingston in all this at this point?
Well, you know, he appeared before committee. He's obviously been questioned by the police regarding his decision to move forward to try to wipe these computers. He spoke to, for example, one of the top civil servants in Ontario who said, look, this is not a criminal investigation. We have to be transparent. We don't wipe computers. But what David Livingston was clearly looking for, according to the documents, is he was looking for a way to wipe these computers clean so that they could not be accessed through the Freedom of Information Act, so that the information would be wiped clear again and again and again through the system so that the information that was on the computers would never be attained. Now, there was a huge collection of data, and it was extremely expensive to the Ontario taxpayers, that the police engaged in to try to find out what exactly this data was that was wiped, because it did still exist in some memory systems. So what stands right now is that David Livingston said in committee that he had done nothing wrong. He defended himself and indicated that he was following proper processes. He was gearing up the Premier's office for Kathleen Wynne to begin, and this is what he said under oath in committee. So it remains to be found whether or not he is in fact guilty. We don't know yet if he's guilty. There's been no charges pressed, but certainly this, you could say, according to these documents, according to the reports, would be a smoking gun against someone like him.
Well, yeah, and I mean, let's take this for what they are. They are allegations that are being leveled that will be proven at some point in time to be true or not true. But when you look at it on its surface and you look at the allegations themselves, it seems out of character or out of procedure at the very least for somebody to be taken basically off the streets. I mean, nobody knows who this guy is. All of a sudden, he is granted government access. You know, if these allegations are true, he's given government access to computers. He's given a high level of access to clear these computers. He's paid $10,000. That's taxpayer money that's going towards him. I mean, we don't even know if that's the working rate for something like this to be done. I heard from a lot of computer people yesterday on my radio show saying this kind of project wouldn't cost you $10,000. This would cost a couple $100, maybe $1,000. So not only, you know, is this completely scandalous if true, but also we probably got gouged on the price of the entire thing. All of it looks odd to me at the very least.
Oh, absolutely. It's very, you know, I worked in government for many, many years, and this kind of stuff did not happen on the government side. And you certainly didn't bring civil servants into the mix in terms of any type of suspicious behaviors. I mean, I never saw it happen, but nonetheless, this, you know, the fact that we have interviews from senior civil servants during the committee and then even in reports as of today, we have senior civil servants saying that they raised red flags, that they raised warning bells, and yet this happened nonetheless. David Livingston was never meant to have administrative access to wipe these computers clean, but he got it. David Livingston should not have, if these allegations are true, should not have hired Peter Feist, who is the Deputy Chief of Staff's boyfriend, to come in, somebody who wasn't hired by the government but was paid for by the taxpayers, $10,000 according to reports, to come in and use this administrative access to wipe these computers clean. 20 computers, who knows how many documents that would have shown that, you know, Dalton McGuinty and his senior staff were behind one of the biggest scandals in Ontario's history.
And it all comes back, and I'm going to guarantee you our viewers are watching this, asking the question, yelling at their TV set, saying, well, why? Why would you go to these lengths? Why would you break, if proven true, why would you break all sorts of protocol and procedure? What are you doing here? What's the bottom line? What's the end game? And when you look at a $1.1 billion power plant scandal, I can imagine there are a lot of people who don't want their names attached to it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the end game here was to protect the Premier from from basically what we have decided as the general public in Ontario, because this story's been going on for many months. The Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne has apologized profusely for the fact that this went wrong. What is, in fact, a colossal waste of money for cancelling 2 gas plants in 2 ridings that the Liberals wanted to win in the 2011 election. This is what it all comes down to. The public didn't like the fact that a natural gas plant was going to be built in 2 ridings, despite the fact that one of the 2 gas plants was already in the process of being built. The contracts were bungled. Getting out of the contracts was extremely expensive. The negotiations were over the top ridiculous in terms of getting out of these contracts. And here we are with a $1.1 billion price tag. And Ryan, at the end of the day, Kathleen Wynne still won a majority government.
Yeah, and we're just a few days before Christmas, so I don't expect, maybe you can correct me, but I don't expect to hear the Premier talking about this investigation or even being grilled on it in the next couple of days.
So, she may be questioned about it if she happens to have a news conference, but given the fact that we're, right in the holiday season, who knows exactly what's going to happen. She may, pack up her bags and head south or just to get away from the fact that she's had a terrible month with the Auditor General's report, which of course was very scathing, and then these new allegations, which definitely point the finger at the Liberal government, which has been in power for now 13 years, and yet they continue to reign on.
That's what happens when you have absolute power. We know the rest of that sentence. Rebecca, thank you so much.